I just watched Disclosure Day, and I have a lot to say. I think I have stronger feelings about this movie than like almost every other movie I've watched this year. I think a lot of people are going to have very strong feelings about this movie one way or the other. I'm fascinated to see this movie release, figure out what audiences think of it, because, and I will say this up front, I did not like it. And it pains me because I love Steven Spielberg. He is one of my favorite directors. When I was growing up, he was hitting home run after home run after home run. You know, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can. So many movies that I love and I find infinitely rewatchable. He feels like he is the director. And I know some people will say maybe his recent output hasn't been incredible. Never saw BFG, wasn't an enormous fan of Ready Player One. West Side Story is great. Fabelmans is great. There's no question he still got it. And there are shots in this movie that are excellent. Some really fun camera work. A lot of the credit for that you could obviously give to Janusz Kaminski, who's the cinematographer for the movie. But visually, this movie is incredibly impressive. Also, no surprise, big John Williams score. Sounds great. Loved it. It wasn't like humming the tune on the car ride home, but the score was very deliberate, and I think it mostly worked. I mean, it's John Williams. Just the fact that there's a new John Williams score out in the wild is incredible. The acting, the performances, interesting. All, I would say, very competent. Everybody's given it 110%. Seen a lot of people say that this is the best Emily Blunt performance. I could be convinced. She certainly does a lot. Josh O'Connor, very compelling. Clear that in like a couple of years, he's going to be an enormous star. Colin Firth, interesting. Coleman Domingo, interesting. Every individual piece of this, well, not every, almost every individual part of this movie works, and works very well, except two things. And now we're going to talk, it's not spoiler territory. I'm not going to spoil the movie here for you. But if you don't want to know anything about any of the plot, which I do think would be really hard at this point, to not know what this movie is kind of about, based on the advertisements. So I'm not going to try to spoil the movie. However, if the subject matter is kind of a spoiler, then I would say you can turn the review off after you hear me say, I really didn't like the script. And for me, that was enough to make me just generally dislike this movie. And I'm going to talk about why. Again, not going to spoil it, but the same way that I think it's hard to review Sinners without talking about vampires, it's hard to review this movie without talking about what it's about. But one other thing I'll say real quick before we get to that, CGI all over the place. Some of it very good. Other things that I was worried about after seeing the first trailer still did not look amazing. And I understand some effects are supposed to look uncanny, but for a movie that overall looked great, the fact that at a critical moment, there's a CGI effect that I think looks pretty rough. That is a real bummer because I think a lot of the action looked great. So like I said, before I get into my bigger issues, do I think some people will love this movie? Yes. Did I love this movie? Absolutely not. Should you go see it? I really don't know. Is the direction, the cinematography, the performances, are those enough to carry a script that just, I don't think is good? And I'm happy for people that will like it, but I really didn't. Okay, let's talk about The Thing. Which is, even though some of the trailers have been kind of coy about it, all of the marketing I've seen for the last couple of months is pretty much fully given it away, is that this movie is about aliens. Now, I know what you're thinking, of course the movie's about aliens. Sure, but early in the cycle for this movie, it kind of seemed like it was so clearly about aliens, but also hiding something, and a lot of the shots gave you the idea like, oh, this isn't exactly an aliens thing. I wonder what's the deal with this moment. Would lead you to believe that maybe it's not an aliens movie. Maybe it's a movie about something else. And the aliens thing's just a clever misdirection. That is not the case. And the most recent trailer, the one that features a lot of just Steven Spielberg talking to camera, makes it very clear that that's what this movie is. Now, I think it's probably important for me to say up front, I am not super into aliens. Don't get me wrong, I love a good alien movie. Big fan of Project Hail Mary this year. I love those Guardians of the Galaxy, they're aliens. Supergirl's an alien. Dune is kind of about aliens. Star Wars, Star Trek. I mean, Nope is one of my favorite movies of the last decade. I will watch an alien movie, and not only that, I don't just enjoy them as talking raccoons and sassy rocks. I am also quite interested in the sociological elements of the discovery of aliens. I really enjoyed the first season of the Three Body Problem show, especially when it got into that subject. So while like UFOs and disclosure and all that, it's not a subject I'm like actively reading message boards about. It is something that in a movie can grab me. However, first of all, this movie doesn't need to be about aliens. It could be about anything. Any secret that the people need to know. There is a science fiction element to how certain parts of the plot move forward. So I'm not saying this is like your average movie about leaking classified documents. There's plenty of funky sci-fi stuff in there. But the parts of the movie that work for me are the parts that don't have anything to do with alien stuff, really. The car chases, like the shot that follows Emily Blunt through the newsroom very early in the movie. I think that's a really cool, interesting shot. I think I've been really soured on aliens recently because it's so clearly something that like the government trots out as like, we're going to release some alien information. You guys want to see? Maybe we'll have an alien. Who knows? And it feels like a distraction. And listen, I'm not against a fun conspiracy theory. I love the silly ones, like people that think that Stevie Wonder's not really blind or Paul McCartney died early in the Beatles' career. I think those are kind of fun. I also think cryptids are really interesting. But this kind of, the truth is out there. There's classified alien information they're not telling you. It just doesn't interest me. But like I've said already in this review, plenty of movies I like are about things I don't really care about. But then they're so amazing that I love it. I have no interest in shark attacks. I'm not scared of sharks. But Jaws is a great movie. Not a huge baseball fan. Stuff like League of Their Own, Moneyball, great. But I would say the real problem in this movie is the script. And you guys know me. I don't like being mean. I don't like beating up on people who are trying to do their job. And I think David Koepp has obviously some real winners under his belt. Some quite recently. I think Kimmy was good. Presence was good. I liked Black Bag, but I did not really care for Jurassic World Rebirth. I did not really care for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And I definitely did not really care for The Mummy, the Tom Cruise one. So I came into this really not knowing what to expect, because sometimes movies written by David Koepp work for me, sometimes they don't. This feels like one of those movies where I'm watching the wrong character, which is to say, there are some characters in this movie that I think have interesting arcs, that I think are compelling. Eve Hewson's character, I think, is probably the best example of that. Colin Firth's character, I think, has interesting stuff going on. We see some of it. I'd like to see more. The parts of the movie that I really disliked were the parts where Emily Blunt's character becomes a clairvoyant exposition machine, or the parts where Coleman Domingo's character says, "You'll find out everything soon, don't you worry." But again, not really trying to spoil it. I don't think this movie has anything stunning or interesting to say about alien invasions, to say about first contact or aliens, or this movie does not, like, say, Nope does, imagine a new kind of alien that completely recontextualizes our relationship with it. And I also don't think Disclosure Day brings forward any new ideas, and especially because, and this was my biggest disappointment with this movie, it doesn't do the interesting part. There's a lot of movies people are going to compare Disclosure Day to, and I think me even saying this one is one I thought of immediately leaving Disclosure Day, it kind of gives too much away. But there's like a really specific reason why the third act of this movie for me just almost completely fell flat. And to be fair, the parts of the third act that were supposed to get like a physical reaction out of me, they got it. But looking back at that third act, with hindsight, kind of knowing where the movie is going, what it is building to, takes all the fun out of it. There is a movie that every so often, this movie kind of gestures towards. One of the characters is a nun, wrestling with the idea of the existence of aliens. Fascinating. That could be the whole movie. As much as I like a good car chase, it doesn't add anything to this. Especially when so many of the action sequences are so strangely contrived. Because there's certain parts of this plot that are very convenient. And when you see the movie, you understand why they're convenient that way. Like, the movie gives an explanation, but A, I think it's a pretty unsatisfying explanation, and B, it doesn't really matter because by the time you get to that explanation, we have watched so many characters just say, I feel like I'm supposed to go that way. Okay, I'm going to go that way. And then they meet a character and they go, me and you were supposed to meet. Let's go over here. On my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, me and my co-hosts do a thing where every episode we run a 15-minute just recap of the movie. And that is so that we can talk about more specific things in context. Because for a lot of people, if you're not seeing the movie, you won't understand it. Because people don't need to watch the new Silent Hill movie to understand how bad the fake beard is. But sometimes people like some context, so we explain it. But sometimes, in an effort to squish a 2.5-hour movie into 15 minutes of summary, you kind of read the stage direction. Right? You say, and then this character goes here, and they see this guy, and he's like, hey, who are you? And they're like, don't worry, we're gonna go figure it out. And then they go. That feels like watching this movie, because so many of the characters are working on this strange instinct, but it's not an instinct like faith, as much as these characters just going wherever the movie tells them to go. I don't think any of the emotional arcs are very satisfying. I think this movie is split up amongst too many characters. Like, I know the reason the movie would give for why we need to have Josh O'Connor and Emily Blunt, but looking back, it feels like this movie needs one of them. And the movie needs to focus on a single main character, and a main character we can learn, like, their history, their backstory. But so on one hand, how characters decide where they're going to go often ends up being somewhat contrived. Ends up feeling like the bit in a meta comedy where the character takes out the script and just flips through it to try to figure out what they're supposed to do next. On the other hand, while the action sequences are thrilling, they're also incredibly silly in a way that makes it kind of impossible to take seriously. The organization that's after our main characters has access to incredible technology, agents all over the place, which is especially impressive because this movie takes place in Kansas City. Because if it took place in New York, you'd go, oh, of course they have some agents there. But like the amount of troops they are able to muster for a Kansas City operation, impressive. However, if they had one helicopter, so much this movie falls apart. I'm not trying to nitpick, poke holes in the plot. I am saying there were multiple points that were supposed to be serious when people in my theater laughed because of something the movie let the main characters get away with that I don't think the movie wanted us to laugh at. I would say the biggest problem with this movie, for me, and the reason why I feel like it goes from being a movie I really want to like, to a movie with a very frustrating script, to a movie that I'm actively, like, kind of angry at, is the marketing, which under normal circumstances I would not say is the movie's fault. However, the final trailer for this movie that released around 2 weeks ago features Steven Spielberg speaking to camera, going, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if aliens existed? I think they do. What if this movie is kind of like what would happen if they showed up? And it feels like this movie is playing into genuine conspiracy theorists. Some, I'm sure, for reasons like they saw something in the sky once that was kind of confusing, and since then they've thought there's something out there. Or maybe people that just have a feeling about that sort of thing. But also a lot of people that believe the government is lying to them and keeping secrets from them. And there is an evil cabal of people that know the truth and take all this so seriously. But looking back at that trailer where Steven Spielberg says, wouldn't it be interesting to see a movie about how people would react to aliens? Say, it would be interesting, Steven Spielberg. This is not that movie. This is a movie about an invisible car chase and a magic stick. And it's cool. Some of it looks better than other bits, somewhat compelling. But ultimately it feels so hollow if you don't believe, like I don't, that aliens are real and they're right around the corner, and it is important and valuable that we spend time finding out about them. Because I think that's the thing about aliens that really bugs me. It feels like a distraction, that every so often the government trots out like, hey, well, maybe we found some aliens. Isn't that interesting? Maybe we'll show you a little bit of the aliens. Ooh. Also, this movie's got a real show-don't-tell problem. There are exciting action sequences where interesting stuff is happening. And then there are calm scenes where characters sit down and talk about how they feel. Great, but because neither of the main characters can really know what's going on, they can't really react to what's happening to them outside of saying, this is crazy. It's crazy that this is happening around me. And when they get to the next place, they just sit there and talk and have a very explicit conversation about what is happening in the plot, and how they all feel about it. And then they get up and do another big action scene, and then they have another conversation. Action scene, conversation, action scene, conversation. It doesn't feel like a lot of these action scenes are like connected to the conversations though. It almost feels like a video game, where you do a level and you watch a cutscene. You do a level and you watch a cutscene. But like Master Chief running down a hallway killing members of the Covenant doesn't really tell you anything new about the Covenant. That's for the cutscenes. I really don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on this movie. I feel like if anything, I'm being too harsh on this script. I think overall I've been pretty generous with how I feel about the direction, the acting, all that. But I think this script feels way more Jurassic World Rebirth than Black Bag. And it left a really bad taste in my mouth. That the advertisements for this movie leaned on the idea, not that the movie was thrilling and exciting, or that the character drama was thrilling and exciting. It was that aliens as a concept are exciting, and wouldn't it be interesting if this was what was happening? I've seen so much promotion for this movie that has Steven Spielberg coming out and talking about other alien movies he made, or showing people the whip from Raiders of the Lost Ark. As if to say, remember these other movies I made that you really liked? This might be like them. And if that's the case, show it to me. But looking back, I completely understand why I felt like I was missing something from the trailers. It's because that emotion just wasn't there. And this is my last thing I'll say. This is that it's a teeny, tiny bit spoilery, but like skip it. Although I feel like if you're this far, this is something that you should probably be okay with knowing. There was a part of me But going into this movie, thought, well, I feel like I've seen a lot of the same scenes in most of the advertising. I wonder if this is one of those movies where all of the scenes in the advertising are from the first 30 minutes of the movie, and it's going to go crazy in another direction we can't even imagine. It is not going to do that. There are some surprises, but more or less what you see in the trailers is what you get. Is it a well-shot movie? Yes. Is it well acted? Sure. Is it like a good script? I don't think so. Also, none of these characters need to be from the United States. Why are 3 of our 5 main characters in this movie doing American accents? And I don't think they're bad at it. I think some are better than others. But just let actors act in their normal accent. Because every so often there's a line that's yelled that doesn't feel quite right. And if it was a Captain America movie, I'd go, well, he does have to sound like that. But I just don't get it here. And this movie just reminds me how much I do like other alien media. Like I said, Nope is like one of my favorite movies of the last decade. So many great X-Men comics are about aliens. And then you got stuff like Twilight Zone, which is great. Gets into aliens a lot. That was something Rod Serling, the creator of the Twilight Zone, clearly was interested in. And a lot of the times he used aliens to get at some sort of fear or societal issue that didn't really have anything to do with aliens. But other times some of his stuff was just about aliens. He's a fascinating person. I learned about him in a video I watched recently by Captain Midnight as part of their Showrunner series, where in every episode, Captain Midnight takes a look at the showrunner for an influential piece of television. His first episode is Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone. Second episode, Vince Gilligan, who, yes, created Breaking Bad, but also did a lot of work on the X-Files. So if you want to learn more about those creatives in the shows, you can watch those videos along with all my videos early and ad-free exclusively on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a subscription streaming platform that I and a bunch of other YouTubers you probably already love helped to create. First thing that's important, all of our videos go up there early and ad-free. So if you want to be the first person to see one of my Nando V movies or Nando Cut videos, Nebula is for you. And then there are series like Jetlag or Tom Scott's England, where they go up on Nebula a week before they go anywhere else. Then we also have Nebula exclusive series of videos, like Tom Nicholas has a series called Slow News Day. Captain Midnight has a series called Showrunners, where he looks at different people that have created television shows. The first episode is about Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone. The second episode is about Vince Gilligan in Breaking Bad. Looks at the journey of how they got to where they were and how that shaped the series they would showrun. And then Curious Archives Gods and Monsters series looks at these different legendary creatures from religion and mythology and talks about how the ideas of those creatures has evolved over time and they've turned into pop culture characters. So you can find all that great stuff exclusively on Nebula. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year. That is $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get Nebula for just $2.50 a month. That is $30 for the year. It's an awesome deal. Go check it out. I guarantee there is a creator you already love who's part of Nebula. And if you spend some time on Nebula, I bet you'll find your new favorite creator. After me, of course. Your second favorite creator because I'm your favorite. Don't correct me. Again, that is go.nebula.tv/thenandocut. Let me know what you think. Comment, tweet, whatever is convenient for you. I am so curious to see where people land on this movie. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.